Hello friends, are you guys ready for spring? I know I am. I'm hoping that if we craft spring DIYs, then spring will come sooner. I don't really think it works that way, but we can always try, right? We're going to do a throwback to the 1995-ish era and do some birdhouses and some crackle. Let's get started on today's DIY.
We are going to start this multi-stepped DIY with some of these bits of spindles. In case you're new to my channel, I'm going to tell you how I came about these. I went and picked up 177 spindles for free off Facebook Marketplace. And I've used quite a few of them, but I still have quite a few in my stash. So those are bits and pieces that I've cut off. This is a piece of scrap wood I thought I was going to use, but it wasn't big enough. So I'm going to use a different piece. And these are a bag of small little birdhouses I got at a thrift store. They were 99 cents each, but I got this entire bag of adorable little solid wood birdhouses for $2.49. What a bargain. Okay, so I'm going to, and I'm going to use these little birds, a couple of these little birds that were in a pack from Dollar Tree. I'm going to start out with Old School by DIY, and I'm going to paint all of these spindles. I only gave them one coat. Old School is a beautiful bluish gray, and I love this color, so I gave all of them one good coat. Now, I want to make these look like fence posts, like some old fence posts. So we're going to use some Elmer's glue to get our crackle effect. I'm going to put a good thick coat of Elmer's glue on here, and in case you don't know this trick, wherever you put it thicker, your crackle is going to be thicker, and you need to put your paint on while the glue is still wet. So I'm putting it all over this spindle, and then I'm going to go in with vintage linen. Now I put it in this little silicone cupcake liner, and I'm getting quite a bit of paint on my brush because you get one stroke. I did one up and then a quick little swipe, one down and then a quick little swipe up. And I'd get some on one side of my brush and then the other side of my brush. And then if I had a little bit that kind of went over the edge, I just very, very lightly wiped it off. And I tried to get a little paint on both sides and then wipe off what was just on the very end. And then I'm going to just dab at the top where I didn't get enough paint. Just swipe it and swipe it. And if you don't get enough paint on there, just trust me and do not go back over it again. Now I'm just dabbing paint on that top part of the spindle, and then I'm going to just swipe it once around. And then I'm going to use the heat gun to show you how quickly and how fun it crackles when you put heat to it. It will crackle if you just let it air dry, but it does so much better if you apply heat to it. You can use a blow dryer or a heat gun. I'll just love to watch that process. Now I'm going to show you on this one that has a little bit more character on those, what do we call those? The rounded edges, the rounded parts, the fun parts of the spindle instead of the straight edges. I'm going to show you how I did that. I'm showing you this little bottom part too, but I'm showing you how I just sort of wiped some of the paint off the brush and then dabbed it on the flat sides of the brush. So I'm using more the flat sides of the brush rather than the tips of it. And then the tips of it in that area. But now when I get to these rounded, I don't even know what to call these parts, fluted parts, I just load up my brush on each side, and then I go like about halfway around and then halfway around again, and just don't overlap because you will have a big mess on your hands if you do, because it begins to crackle within seconds. And so, I just get a healthy amount. And then the more paint you have on your brush too, you'll have that thicker where it looks like some of the paint was thicker on there, and then places where you don't put as much paint, it'll look like the paint was a little more worn off. Really, you cannot mess this technique up, I don't think, unless if you swipe over it, then you mess it up. But if you just see there, I didn't get enough paint, I keep wanting to swipe over it, just don't. Just trust the process. And I'm showing you here how beautiful that crackle looks. I just absolutely love it. So I did all of my little fence posts. I'm going to call these little spindles our little fence posts. I did all of them with that very same technique until I got them all done. Now we're going to move on to our next step. So I took all my little birdhouses and we're going to paint them all differently. The first one looks like a little barn, so we're going to use Barn Red by Dixie Belle. And the roof I did with a mixture of colors that I had mixed up before, so I'm sorry that I don't know what color it is, but you know, if you're doing birdhouses, just do the roof or whatever color you want to do it. I wanted this to be a little bit of a lighter gray. I thought it was going to dry down a little bit lighter than it did because I wanted it to look a little bit silver like metal, but I love how it turned out in the end, so it doesn't really matter. And I'm going to apologize if you can hear thunder in the background. We are having some kind of thunderstorm out there tonight. Okay, this little birdhouse is going to get farm fresh and weathered wood. I'm not going to show you every single bit of painting I do, or this video would be an hour long. But I did the birdhouse in farm fresh, and I'm showing you the technique I'm using on this little roof. I'm painting on with weathered wood, and I'm taking a baby wipe and wiping some of the paint off in random places. So I want these birdhouses to all look like they've been out in the weather. And then when I finish that, I just dry it down a little bit with my heat gun. I want you to see how beautiful that paint looks. This little birdhouse is going to get Queen Bee by DIY. I get my DIY paints from Sammy over at unicorndustdesigns.com. I always have her website linked in my description box below. She sells all kinds of goodies over there, saltwash, IOD products, and lots of awesome thrifted and repurposed items. Sandy Blonde is going on the roof of this little birdhouse, and in the end you're going to see that I go back in and kind of distress them and give them some character. These are just the base coats. So petticoat pink on this cute little birdhouse. This is very unique shaped. I absolutely love this one and how it turns out. Petticoat pink for the birdhouse, and the top of it was that vintage linen? I can't remember what we used on the top. No, it might have been, I think it was vintage linen. But the paint that I used on the top of this one was really thick, and I really liked that I didn't get a full coat. Okay, I'm going to show you too. I didn't really show you very good on that one. I show you better in another one. So I didn't do full coverage on this. It was not really like a dry brush, but the paint was really thick, so I couldn't get it to spread really good. So I just kind of used that to my advantage and let some of that wood grain show through, and I really like how that turned out. Okay, we're going to use Fancy Farm Girl on this one. Love this green. Going to give the bottom, the birdhouse part of this one, a good coat. I really just did one coat of paint on each one of these. This wood was really nice. It didn't really soak the paint up too much, so I just really had to do one coat. I believe this is the little birdhouse I showed you, yes, that I took a Q-tip and just loaded it up with some paint, and I used only one end of the Q-tip, so I cut them in half and just used it to get down in that hole, because you will not really see it because I end up putting Spanish moss over it, but you know, I just was being a little pedantic. Now I'm going to take faded burlap and weathered wood, because I thought this is the color I wanted for the roof, but weathered wood has a gray base to it, and so it was a little too gray. I tried adding some black, and of course that just made it a darker gray. That is not the color I wanted. So let's take layered chocolate, which is a beautiful deep brown, like chocolate brown, and add a little faded burlap to it, because I was really going for kind of a lighter brown, but not really like weathered wood. And so this was the perfect color. So I went ahead and put that on there, and I'm going to use that other color later though, so don't fear. We're not going to waste that paint. So I painted this one, and then I did go in with a little lighter color and gave it a little bit of highlighting on top. I do believe I show you that. Oh, I did layered chocolate. I did some layered chocolate on the tops of those. Here I'm going in with the faded burlap and giving it a little highlighting. Yeah, I did use the layered chocolate and the faded burlap to give it some dimension, some dark and some light. Okay, now our little church birdhouse. We're going to use white swan and sandy blonde. So white swan all over, sandy blonde for the roof. And then while I had sandy blonde still wet on the roof, I went in with, okay, let's wait till we get there because I can't remember right off the top of my head what I used on there. But I just did the very tops of that. I didn't go underneath and do the underneath. I just did what I thought would have been the roof. And I love these two colors together, and when I sealed it up, you're going to love how it turns out. I hope you love it as much as I do anyway. So once I get this all on there, while it's still a little wet, I come in with that chocolate. And some of it was already a little bit too dry, so I just kept going back in with the faded burlap and the layered chocolate until I got it where it looked, like it's a little bit, like it looks like some weathered wood, like some wood that's been outside for a while. So I went ahead and put some faded burlap on there so it would be a little, still a little wet, so it would blend and smear a little bit together. Because that's the look right there I was going for. Okay, our little condo, we're going to use Hey Sailor and Prom Queen. We're going to mix them together until we get the blue that I want. So I mixed it together, added a little bit more Hey Sailor until I got it just the right color. Prom Queen was just a little bit too light and Hey Sailor was a little too dark, so we just mixed them together. So that's the color that I wanted for our little townhouse birdhouse. And I just painted the bottom of it. And I did paint I would paint the bottom and then I would use my heat gun to dry the bottom so that I would have something to hold on to. So that color that I mixed up earlier that I decided I didn't like, it was too gray, that's what we're using now. So we didn't want to waste that paint, so we're going to use it. And just give it a coat on the top, and we'll come back to it and give it some character a little bit later. Oh, we're going to do that now. Never mind. We're going to add a little bit of faded burlap in that and just give it a little bit of highlighting on the top peaks of those layers of the roof. Give our little shingled wood a little bit of dimension. I had so much fun doing this. I love to paint. I love to shadow and give things dimension. Okay, here we go. We're gonna fix all of these little birdhouses and give them some character. So I'm using a very dry brush with this and just gonna hit the tops of it, just the edges, so that it doesn't look quite so plain. So you can kind of really see those ridges. And then I'm going to go, it's almost like I'm outlining it. So I'm going to outline the edges, the fronts and the backs, just around the roof. And I'm going to do that on several of these. So I do that with the layered chocolate still. I changed brushes. I got a different little flat brush, and I'm just doing it back so that I'm not trying not to get it on the green. And if I get it a little bit on the green, then I just take the green and do a little touch up and fix my boo-boos. And then I'm going to use the layered chocolate in those little, what am I doing? Doing it up underneath to make it a little darker under there to make it look like it has some shadowing. And just doing a little more of that outlining. Don't you love that Farm Fresh color? It's so beautiful. It's probably one of my favorite DIY paints. Still using the layered chocolate just to get some depth and dimension in there. I just don't want too much on my brush because I don't want to get it all over the place. Now I'm going in with, I added a little bit of black to that gray mixture, and just very ever so lightly going around the edges of this and across the tops of those ridges. Barely, just so you can see where it starts and stops. Now I got it a little much on there, so I took another small chippy brush with no paint on it, and almost like I was using it like an eraser almost. And I really love how that worked. Using that dark gray on the barn because the roof was a gray base. And then on the silo part, I did decide to go ahead and make just a little thin line, and it didn't even have to be perfect or anything, right there to kind of differentiate it from the barn so it would kind of, be separate. And then again, I just hit the ridges and to highlight that to just give it some separation. And I'm doing that just with the side of the paintbrush. Same with this. I just kind of used the side of that paintbrush with some gray. I added a little white on that paper towel with that gray I was using because this one was much lighter and I didn't want that dark gray on there. So yeah, that's what I did. Okay, now to start sealing these, I used the old and gray liquid patina on the barn, and I just gave it one good thin coat all over the entire thing, and I love how this turned out. So I used the old and gray on the barn and the church. I did that on both of them. I'm just showing you how it looks while I'm painting it, and I was trusting the process because I was afraid that I had messed it up by using that. But once it dried, I really love how it turned out. So then I got brave and used it on the white swan, and I was like, oh, it's going to look really gray. And I was like, I should wipe some off, but nope, I didn't. And this also acts as a sealer, so that was nice. Now I'm going to use some DIY wax in clear, and I'm using this little makeup brush. I get these on Amazon. They come in a 5-pack. I'm going to show you a picture of them right here. They come in all these different sizes. This pack was $8.99 when I purchased it. I have it linked in my Amazon storefront, which is in the description box below. If you want to go and check them out, please do. They are wonderful to stencil with. They're wonderful to apply waxes with. I absolutely love them. Use them in almost every DIY I do. Now I'm using a little white wax mixed with a little clear wax on this one because I just wanted it to look a little bit different. The blue was just a little too stark and flat. So here they all are, all waxed and ready to go. Now here, back to our little birds. I gave them one coat of beadboard. I believe it was beadboard. And I didn't like them white, so I took some of the blue that I was using, and I used some prom queen, and I used some of our special mixture. I added a little gray. I added a little bit more blue to it. I just kept pouncing colors on there till I got them the color that I wanted. And in the end, I only used 2 of them anyway, but we'll save those other 2 for another spring project. Now this little wooden tag we're going to use for our scripture verse, so I just painted it with that blue color. Okay, now for the fun part. We're going to assemble. I got this big piece of wood out of my scrap wood from the dumpster dive. I drilled holes where I wanted each one of those little fence posts, aka spindles, to sit. Now, I've done this method many times on my channel, but for those of you who are new, I'm going to show it again. I drill the holes, and then I use these little skewers. You could use little dowel sticks, whatever you have, and I cut them with my miter shears. You can cut them with scissors, or if you have a miter saw or whatever you need to do. And now I cut this out on my Cricut, and I use the iron-on, the HTV heat transfer vinyl, and I iron it on wood all the time. I like it better than using the adhesive vinyl. It's much easier to weed for number one. Okay, I'm kind of just looking for placement there, and then I'm going, the H, the reason it's separate is because it didn't cut right on the first one, and when I went to weed it, it all ripped up, and it was it just messed up, so I had to cut it again, and I only cut the H, so I didn't have to cut the whole thing. So we're just going to piece it together because, that's what we do. We fix our mistakes. So I'm just working with placement there, and then I'm going to use my parchment paper. I'm going to use my little iron. You can use a household iron with no steam, and press it down good. I'm going to press it one little time without the parchment paper because this wood is very porous and it's rough. It's kind of almost like I don't think it's cedar. It could be cedar, but it's that type of wood. It's a rough wood. So I'm also gonna put that little H on there. And his eyes on the sparrow comes from Matthew 10, verse 31, where Jesus tells his disciples, "Don't be afraid. You are more valuable to God than many sparrows." And in 1905, a lady by the name of Sevilla Durfee Martin wrote a song called "His Eye is on the Sparrow," and it's been sung by many singers over the years. And it's just, if you haven't heard it, just go over to Google and look it up. It's a beautiful song, and I love it. So I'm taking a tiny little bit of dark wax and just kind of going over that so it's not so stark. Now I'm showing you the difference in these two sizes of skewers that I'm using. This is the thinner skewer you can get at Dollar Tree as well. And that's what I'm going to use to attach the birdhouses. Now I'm matching up my drill bits. This is how I learned to do it, is to match the end of it up with the however big you need the hole. So I'm going to drill a hole in the top of our little fence post. I'm calling these our fence posts, and make sure that it fits in there. And then I'm going to mark how much I want it to stick out. And I'm going to cut those with my miter shear, just like I did the other ones. And then yeah, that's going to work. And then I'm going to drill a hole in the birdhouse as well. And I'm just kind of guessing where it needs to go, because it doesn't matter if these are a little bit crooked. Okay, so I'm going to do that for every single one of those fence posts and the birdhouses. I'm not going to show you all of that, but because it's a really weird angle. Same with all this gluing method. It's a really weird angle, so I'm just going to show you. I put some Tap Bond Quick and Thick out on a little piece of parchment paper, and I'm going to dip the little dowel stick, the little skewer, in the glue. And then I'm just using a paintbrush. You could just squirt it on if you wanted to, but I just squirted it out. It's just easier for me to do it this way. And I'm going to paint a nice thick layer on the bottom of our little fence post, making sure I get it, over that hole really good and around our little stick. So the idea is that stick is going to hold this on there really good. Hot glue is going to not let our two pieces of wood, it's going to create a little gap in there. When it's thick, and it's going to create a little gap. So I want to use the wood glue. So I'm showing you the last one here, and I kind of messed up on the hole on the bottom, so I had to really wiggle it down and twist it and wiggle it and try to get it in there, but it worked. I just had to push it down on there really hard. Okay. So there they are. They're all finished. They're all good. And now I'm going to show you the birdhouse. Just put that down in there. I'm putting some glue on top. The angle was really hard to do from overhead. And so I'm just going to show you this. My hand kept getting in the way. And so I'm just going to show you that that's how easy that is. And so I did all the birdhouses the same way. And now they're all on there. And I changed my camera angle. And the lighting is terrible. And my hands are in the way most of the time, but I think you can see what I'm doing. I'm taking a little bit of Spanish moss, and I'm going to glue inside all the holes of the birdhouses. I didn't show all of that because, like I said, my hands are in the way, but I think you guys know how to hot glue a little Spanish moss in the holes of the birdhouse or on the perches. I only put 2 birds on there. I tried to make it look like they were sitting on the perch or in the Spanish moss. So I put one on the yellow birdhouse and one on the green birdhouse. And then I glued our little tag. I put a little bit of twine, jute twine on. And we're going to just put our little tag down there to put our scripture reference on. And then I'm just going to pull apart some Spanish moss and just poke it and pull it and poke it until I have it all across the bottom of this cute little decor piece. And then I'm going to take my hot glue gun and just run some hot glue underneath it in a few places, and just so it doesn't fall off. I didn't put a lot of hot glue. I just put it in a few places. And I did end up putting a few little sprigs of greenery in there. I didn't really like it, so I took them out. So I didn't even put that on camera, because you could put some greenery in there if you wanted to, some little pieces of greenery. But I really love how this turned out. You'll have to let me know what you think about it. It's very 1995.
That's it for today's video, my friends. I hope that you really enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed all the little tiny birdhouse on all the little makeshift fence posts out of spindles. Let me know if you think it was reminiscent of the 95-ish era. I totally think it is. If you are new to my channel, welcome. My name is Kendra. This is Late Night Creations. I hope you'll stick around. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the little all bell so that you will be notified every time that I upload a new video, which is typically every weekend. But most of all, everyone, remember to be still and know that He is God.